Just testing if this is working because it just shut down unexpectedly before this. I hope it continues to work because I can't keep repeating the same message. Otherwise, I have to record it separately and then upload it, and that becomes a whole different story. Hello, and welcome to another session of Lessons from My Mother. Lesson 49. We're almost at the half-century mark. It's only a small token of how I can celebrate and cherish and venerate and revere my mother and show my love for her that I have made this list with the help of my brothers and my mother, obviously, and trying to go over them one each week, hopefully to compile them into a book next year sometime and then publish it. And hopefully it becomes a global bestseller because that's what my mum deserves, obviously. And I was in Ottawa just a few days ago, and it was so wonderful to see people in Ottawa. We were at the British ambassador's house, the High Commissioner's residence, and it was so lovely to see that even friends there have been familiar with the content, and they say, "Ali, lovely to see you. I watch your lessons from your mother. They're very nice," and this, that, the other. And gentlemen and ladies in their later stages of life, I would say, over 50, over 60, and they're watching it. So there's a strong chance that their parents may not be alive. If they are, fantastic. But if they're not, and for them to come and say this to me and then say things like, "Well, you know, my mother also, I watched one of your videos, and my mother used to say the same thing." It's just mind-blowing to me. And I've had that moment a few times now, particularly from a generation or two older than me, less so with people of my same generation, they or younger. They tend to argue with me more about, "Oh no, that's not right, that's not wrong, and this is not how you do it." They tend to be involved in that sort of a phase where their ego is still more important than their bond and loyalty and submission and love for their parents. But it's fine. They'll get there if they must, or if they're going to. If they don't, I couldn't care less. So it's so wonderful to see this even happen in Ottawa, in England, in Turkey, and wherever, in Saudi. I was so happy to see that people are engaging with the content, and it's all because of my wonderful and lovely mother. God give her the greatest of lives, healthy, affluent, relaxed, peaceful, and fulfilling. And all of us, this whole family, my vision is that all of us are working tirelessly to fulfilling our parents' lives, especially in their old age, but even when they're younger. So yeah, I'm going to stop here because otherwise it doesn't become a lesson anymore. So today's lesson, I've covered similar topics before about cleanliness, about things having the right place, about shoes inside the house versus shoes outside, and proper place for shoes. Don't think I've covered this one, and that is no work clothes at home. So we used to come from school in uniform, and then I remember my mother wouldn't ever let us sit down for lunch until we had washed up and changed into our home clothes before having lunch. It just wouldn't happen. It would be, "What are you still doing? Do you want to go back to school?" And we're like, "No." "Then go change." Because we'd be sitting and there was one TV channel at that time, but we'd be trying to watch TV or play around or waste time. She'd be like, "What are you doing? Go change into your home clothes so you can have lunch and then start homework. And once you're done with homework, play around a little and then get back to work. What are you doing?" And that would happen as young as I remember. And when we came to England after school, there was no uniform. Some boarding schools have uniform, but most high schools / colleges, they don't have uniform. So I went to the wonderful John Leggett College in Lincolnshire. It's one of the best uh, in the region, specifically, um, but also highly ranked across the country. And we didn't have a uniform. So sometimes you'd see people wearing a suit, sometimes you'd see people wearing a skirt, sometimes people wear shorts, sometimes people wear whatever. So you could just go with a hoodie or a shirt or a coat or whatever, and you could go, and there's no uniform. And then you come home, you don't really have to change out of those school clothes, right? You can just come home and say, well, this is it. This is how my life is going to be, and I'm happy this way. And that's about it. But my mum would say, why are you still wearing that? And I said, why not? She said, these are your college clothes. I was like, no, I can wear this at home. It's one of those t-shirts that I could, wear outside and then inside. And she's like, no, 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 you have to take this off. You have to take this off, put it in the laundry, and wear something that you would wear at home. And I'm like, what is this? It's not a uniform. Why am I supposed to do this? If I were in the military, or if I were a medical doctor, or if I were in the police force, or in the fire brigade, or in certain responsibilities where there's a work-related uniform that I have to preserve and keep that uniform clean, fair enough. But these are clothes that I'm going to wear to my friend's house. These are clothes I'm going to wear to college. Why do I have to change out of them? But she wouldn't. At that time, because we were mid-teens, mid-teens are prone to argument, so we would be ready to argue, and as as a mid-40s, sorry, yeah, mid-40s lady or late 40s lady, she wasn't having any of it. She wasn't getting into the argument with us. There was no back and forth. They were like, do this. But do this. It was that clear, because she was like, why am I going to engage with this inane energy? Because most teenagers, and I'm famous for being one of them, are designed to be a contrarian. They're designed, that's the way the hormones are flowing, that's the way the energy is going. We have to rebel, we have to resist. And now, since I know some teenagers, I can see it in them. And I remember, because I was a teenager less than 20 years ago. And I remember, oh, I used to be like that too. Okay. Oh, it's the energy. Okay. It's youth. You're supposed to rebel against the structures and the established norms. Fair enough. So, so my mum would say this, and we'd change into those home clothes, and she'd take those other ones and put them in the laundry, or we'd put them, and then next day we would wear something else. I never understood that at the college level. But then when I joined university, firstly in Sheffield, then in Turkey, I remember that I would go to class and then come back, and then I'd suddenly start changing out of my clothes. And as soon as I change out of my clothes, my entire demeanor would change. So I've been in the design studio from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening, let's say. I'm an architect, essentially. So it would take all that time. I'd come back home and I already had dinner. And I'd be like, no, I hadn't had dinner. I've had lunch and perhaps a breakfast. I'd come home and I'd be like, okay, I need to study and I need to eat and I need to watch something while I eat. I'll go to my cafeteria. Let me change out of my home clothes. So I would change out of my home clothes, school clothes, home clothes, and put my school clothes somewhere in the wardrobe. And all of a sudden, the mindset would change. I'd be relaxed. I'd go to the canteen, buy a lovely sandwich with a drink. I'd come and eat it, and I'd study a little, and then go to sleep. And suddenly, life would have regulation. And then I would see my friends, because I had two different roommates. I was staying in a two student room. So I had a roommate for the first 2 years, and then a different roommate for the last year. And the one for the last year became one of my closest friends. An incredibly high performing individual, incredibly top marks at our university, then went to Harvard, then he was at MIT or for a couple of years as a postdoc while teaching at Washington State or something. He's Big man. Has worked at the cyclotron, the LHC in Switzerland. Big man. I think he's also attended a Nobel dinner. And so he's a good man. And the difference that I saw in both of them was that the first one, who was an average student, he had an average ambition. He was just like, I'm just here to chill and just not bother anyone. He would wear the same clothes outside, wear the same clothes inside. He wouldn't have a distinction between in and out. He'd come in and out. He didn't have structure to his life. Sometimes he'd drink till 3 o'clock in the morning, then throw up in our restroom. Sometimes he would sleep early because he's tired. Sometimes he would be doing inappropriate stuff to himself. As soon as I'd open the door, I'm like, whoa, 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 okay, okay. The other one would wake at a particular time, would sleep at a particular time. He'd have clothes in which he would go to the gym. He would clothes which he would wear at home. He'd have clothes which he wore outside. He also owned a car at the point when most other students didn't own a car. So he would be very, very prepared and segmented. And I never asked him why he is that way, because by that time, listening to my mother, I had also become that way, that I wouldn't wear my outside clothes inside. And I wouldn't take my inside clothes even to go shopping. I know it's comfortable. I know it's a bit cool. Oh, I was wearing these shorts at home and I'm wearing them in the market. But it reminds me of what status I hold myself up to. Because you're supposed to consider presentation. I'm not saying be a slave to it. I'm not saying try to dress as others would want you to dress or dress to impress. I'm not saying any of that. But I'm saying we have to consider presentation. Our presentation in the shower is different from our presentation in the living room, different from our presentation in the bedroom, different from our presentation maybe in the kitchen. So, for example, I have slippers which I only wear at home. I haven't taken these slippers down even to the lobby. I have a separate set of sandals which I wear in the lobby of my building because I know that the lobby is a dirty area, dirty in the sense that people bring their shoes from the outside, and those sandals will bring those shoes inside, and then those slippers will be in my private space, and then so on and so forth. So first, it's a cleanliness argument, but secondly, it's an organizational argument. Have you divided the outside and inside of your house, the outside and inside of your bedroom, the outside and inside of your bathroom? Do you have any delineation, or is it all a fuzzy blur and you're just living through it, partying your way? So my mum's lesson about outside clothes inside is about delineation of space, delineation of activity, distinction of space, distinction of activity, and then establishing standards in certain places. So I was invited. No, who am I thinking about? Yeah, I was invited to a lunch, I think a couple of months ago, with my wonderful donor, love him to bits. And I remember going to see one of my professors and saying, hey, I'd love to introduce you to my donor because you've heard about him. And he said, I'm not wearing the right shoes. And I said, no, it's okay. He's like, no, I'm meeting somebody formally. I'm not wearing the right shoes. I just came from running. I'm wearing casual clothes. I'm not wearing the right shoes. And I looked at him and I was so impressed. I was like, look, how much regard is he giving the other person? And how much regard is he giving his first impression and his every impression? So if you meet somebody who's always wearing a suit or who's always wearing a properly tailored dress versus somebody who's slacking or mixing what they're wearing, you'd have a different opinion about them. It doesn't matter how you feel about this fact. This is how human beings make and retain judgments. And judgment isn't a negative term. I'm not saying you're being judgmentally negative or negatively judgmental if you're making judgments. We make judgments about everything. So we perceive and then we judge if we have properly functioning mental faculties. So you would judge them differently. And I was watching my professor and I said, I have a coat in my office. I can give you a coat. He was like, No, okay, I'll just meet him briefly, but not for long. And I'll prefer to meet him while standing up. And that's what they did. But eventually they sat down and I said, look, I understand where you're coming from. And I've had similar experiences. I went to a ballet a couple of days ago, actually a week ago. And one of my friends had been staying over somewhere else and he wasn't able to fully dress up. And he turned up in semi formal clothing. And all throughout the event, he was like, I'm not dressed properly. I was like, yeah, you're fine. It's all right. He was like, no, I couldn't plan accordingly, so I didn't have time to go back home and get dressed. I feel so unprepared. And that person is a successful researcher, I don't want to name him or identify him, therefore I'm not going to give a lot of details about him or her. Um, but they're a very successful, well-to-do, respected person in their field. And I could see that the standards that he's holding for himself uh, are marvelous. And I've noticed similar things. For example, if I'm invited to somebody's house, I rarely go empty handed. That's a standard, right? And if I get invited to somebody's house, I don't go in home clothes. I don't say, oh, well, I was just wearing this. I turned up. No, no. I'm going to put in the effort because there's a standard that I hold myself up to, and there's a standard that I hold you up to, and this is the standard. What I wear in private is what I wear in private. So the distinction of space, the distinction of activity, the development of standards for yourself and for everything you engage with elevate your life. They say, I can do this here and I can do that there, and that's how you distinguish them. Then there's the cleanliness argument, which is prevalent throughout my mother's discourse about every single thing about cleanliness because she's a histopathologist. So obviously she knows disease better than 99.9% of us. So it's prevalent there. But I have also figured out, and I would say this would be the emotional or spiritual or not existential, not phenomenological, but something that touches you at a visceral, physical level, which is I relax as soon as I put on my home clothes. I come back from work, whether it's 18 hours, 16 hours, 12 hours, 8 hours, 5 hours. I come back from the outside and I take my shoes off. There's a cabinet where I put my shoes. If the socks are clean enough, I put them in one place. If they're not clean, I put them in the laundry. And I come and I change. And if the clothes are wearable again, I wear them again, or I leave them in a place to air off if they're not in the laundry. And I have home clothes already waiting in a particular spot. Yes, I'm that person. And I go and put them on and I'm like, these are my home clothes. Cool. As soon as I do that, everything from here down to my toes simmers down like this. It settles down. I don't know if it's confirmation bias. I don't know if it's like Pavlov's dog or like a placebo effect. I don't know if the home clothes hold a tactile value towards my skin. But what I do know is you can't explain this to a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old or a teenager. But what I do know is this is what she was trying to say. It was tied to all these factors about space, about activity, about standards, about cleanliness, and then about this impact that it has on you. And that happens every time. And it leads me to wonder, when you go to a funeral in the Western countries, Italy, France, England, America, Canada, you go in a black suit and the ladies wear black dresses mostly. You don't turn up in a white dress or a very colorful floral dress and you say, well, I'm celebrating, because it's not meant to be a celebration. Now, I understand that after post-structuralism in the 80s with Foucault and with Habermas and Derrida and Lacan and Deleuze and Guattari, and I know the French movements because I had to study them. I know after that, now we might say, well, why is black depressing? Black is a powerful color. I think white is depressing. I think red is depressing. So you can think that and you can feel that about your own perspective of certain colors. But why do we still have fixed colors and clothes for certain occasions? So you can try to impose this reasoning to funerals in the West, and some people might agree, but you never see this happen in funerals in South Asia, or I'm not familiar with East Asia or Africa, but funerals in South Asia, most people wear white because it's pure and it's the color of the spirit, as we believe. And you can't say, well, I believe red is the color of the spirit. No, no, we don't play that game in South Asia. So we wear white because it's pure and it's simple and we're representing that we are upset. We're suffering in grief. The same white becomes a wedding white in the West. It's so interesting that different colors mean different things, but also those different colors mean different things at different occasions in different places. So colors and clothes have a place and a time. So if I turned up in a white dress at a wedding in the West, it would be problematic because not me, in a dress, if a lady turned up. So the bride could have an issue that why are you wearing white? Because I've seen a lot of bridal requests about nobody wearing white. But it's different in South Asia. But that's the clothes you wear. Even when it's a religious festival, like Eid or the other Eid or Diwali or Holi, you have particular clothes you try to wear, you try to represent all around the world. So there's a deep emotional connection to it. For example, most people in South Asia wouldn't wear white as a bride or as a bride. The groom has a particular clothing who can wear white at certain times. It's called a sherwani. But otherwise, brides are dressed in red or really powerful, vibrant colors, as opposed to the West, where it's virginal white. That's how it started, right? So colors mean different things. You don't turn up to a wedding if you're the bride or groom in your home clothes, in your sleeping clothes. Why? Why is that? Don't hide it behind, oh, I'm celebrating, I need to do this. No. So this is particularly for people who say, well, no, it doesn't matter what you wear and where you wear it. No, try to get married and turn up in shorts. Just chill out shorts in a t-shirt, just relax. There are very few people who are able to do that. And the ones who are able to do it have an incredibly strong moral constitution. And I'll tell you why. Because they would say, look, it doesn't matter what I wear, it doesn't matter what you wear. We don't even have to rent a hall. We can have a small court ceremony and then we can celebrate it in a Pizza Hut or wherever. That's how they're thinking. Or Pizza Hut, or just we're going to go to Wendy's or McDonald's and just relax and just have a good time and that's it. And we're married. That requires a strong constitution because you're going against the established norms of the society. So you can't use that as a crutch. Well, some people dress like that. No. Most people understand that places and activities have certain clothing tied to it. And it's all embedded in your culture. And I repeat, I understand that after post-structuralism in the West, people have been trying to break structures. And we're seeing that in race, and we're seeing that in gender, or in power scales, or in established hierarchies. I understand that. But these things, culture is hard to break. And you haven't even been able to break those structures in the West. It's going to take incredibly long to break them in the East. So it's become a political dialogue right now. I'm going to reel it back in. But the point is this. Clothing is intrinsically tied to your activity and to your location or where you are. And it's best to keep that in mind because it regulates your life, not only physically or mentally, but also emotionally and spiritually. So this is an incredibly important lesson from my mother, and I'm grateful that she gave it to me. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and I shall see you